Welcome back, you wonderful humans, to the Canadian podcast portal to DJs, producers, electronic music, the industry, the stream, the dance floor, and everything that goes bump in the night. We are recorded live at Pod 6 Studios with the efforts of our producer Dan Rice and wizard engineer Rob. I am Jello, the host and Digi Sherpa for our audio and video storied experience. And we're venturing into the USA today to get together with a multi-genre DJ hero from the late 90s in New York City. Our guest has championed D&B, breaks, electro, two-step, speed garage, and more. Early releases with Ohm and Breakbeat Science wowed dance floors everywhere and sent this dynamite performer across the globe to share in the delights of her curated electronic music. It didn't take long before her DJ name was at the forefront of a promoter's lists to headline. The desire to push the idea of her fave music went even further with the creation of Play Me Records and the following Play Me 2 records. Multiple TV appearances, more DJ performances than you could shake a glow stick at, and the likelihood that none of this was as easy to do as I'm reading it through it all here for our intro. And I'm stoked to find out the how and the why of this adventure as we get nearly 14 feet deep in the utility room with our guest, REID SPEED. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate it. Firstly, I'm curious. I saw a doll or something on your setup where your vinyl is. What is this doll that's behind you?
Let's see if that gets in the shot. Well, that one is a dunny. It's like a bunny that smokes a cigarette.
Okay.
But there's another one up there that is a crazy cat lady, but I don't think that one's in the shot.
Okay, yeah, I think that's what I saw before. It was like a black thing. Are these like a garden gnome except it's for your vinyl? Is
I guess. I don't know. I collect a lot of weird things like that. Like I have some squirrel stuff and I have a lot of hood ornaments from cars from my younger days, and records. And
were those grabbed by you personally, or were they gifted?
Not gifted.
Interesting collection. What is the? Can we jump right into the questions as we're doing this? Let's do it. Thank you. What is the origins of your alias?
Okay, so when I was just starting out and had just met like my first DJ friend, he sort of invited me to hang out and he wanted to like show me off to his friends because I was sort of the first female drum and bass DJ that anyone there had ever met.
Right.
And you know, I was still in high school and I was really excited. And when we'd be walking around, we'd be walking and then I'd look around and no one would be there and they'd all be a block behind me. And so he kind of just said, you know, you walk so fast, you talk so fast, you do everything really fast, like you're just REID SPEED. Then it stuck.
So where did the REID come from? The speed I'm picking up, but why REID?
That's my name.
Is that actually your first name?
That's my name.
Awesome sauce. Why did I was under the impression that your first name was something else.
Yeah, Wikipedia's got some bad info out there.
Indeed. Okay, yeah, I did pull some stuff from there, so good call. Have you checked out your own wiki and read it? Have you ever tried to fix it?
No.
You're just like, let it be.
It's a user-generated thing. Like, I don't know, people are going to say whatever they want.
Right. You know, you're true. Let's say some good stuff. How about this? How did you discover drum and bass? Was it through this DJ friend, or was it two-step first? And
it was drum and bass first. Well, I started going to raves in the summer, like in 1994. I started going to raves, and as soon as I went, like the first rave I went to, there was no drum and bass, but as soon as I started going to parties in New York, I heard it and I didn't know what it was, but I always gravitated towards it because the people that were dancing would always dance way better when the drum and bass would come on. So it just resonated with me from the first time I heard it. And as soon as I had turntables, like the first records I bought were all drum and bass. And, the two-step didn't come till later. So all the other stuff came a little bit later, but not that much later in the scheme of things. It was like about a year into my DJ adventure that I discovered Speed Garage, which became two-step. I had taken a trip to England in the summer. I think it was the summer of '97. I made a pilgrimage. I was like, I'm going to go buy all these records. Someone had hooked me up with the people at Moving Shadow who said I could come to their office and like buy a bunch of records off them. So I just went to all the record stores. I went to Boogie Times, which was the suburban bass store in Romford, Essex, which is like a 2-hour train ride from London. Obviously, I went to Black Market, and man, I'm blanking on all the other ones that I went to back then.
Black Market was definitely like a hot spot for drum and bass.
Yeah, it was the one.
Yeah.
But there were more. Like I went to like every store that I could find. But on the flight, on the way there was a DJ magazine in the seat back pocket that someone had just left there.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, really? Like, wow. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it had like some info about a night called Twice as Nice, and it said the bass lines of jungle with the something of house. And I was so curious what this could sound like. So I went to the night, and honestly, that trip was life-changing. The first night, I found all these venues in this magazine, went the first night to this venue called Smithfield's, which I think became Fabric later. But it used to be like an old meat market, and it was like a true players night. And I went in there and asked somebody, oh, hey, do you know when DJ Zinc is going to be on? And he was like, oh, yeah, I'm on at this time. And like, here's Pascal and here's Danny Breaks. And like, Hype should be here soon. And they were super nice. And it was great. They were like, oh, we're doing this weekend. Like, here's this. Like, take my number if you want something. Like, it was really cool.
Wow. That must have felt great to have that inclusion right off the bat, too.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that was one of the things about being an early female DJ is that most people were just so happy that there was a woman like in the space. Like everyone was pretty nice to me at first.
I definitely do want to talk a bit about that. But before we do, when you came back home after that trip, how were you finding new music?
I shopped at Breakbeat Science when Breakbeat Science opened in like the summer of '96, which is when I moved to Manhattan to go to college, and it was 10 blocks from my house. So I had been going to Satellite before that, but whatever, their drum and bass selection was all right. But when Breakbeat Science opened, that was like the mecca. And even though I was sort of interning at Satellite at that time because I really wanted to work in a record store, but obviously I didn't really know anybody. But one of the owners of Satellite sort of like befriended me, and he like let me intern, and I would go with him every week to the record distribution center, and we'd pick out all the records in this really old school way where you pushed a giant shopping cart through this warehouse and like pulled the vinyl off.
That sounds crazy.
It was really neat. But yeah, after like a long time of doing this, like at least 6 months of doing this, I was like, you need to give me a job. Like, let me be the drum and bass buyer. And he was like, no. So that was the end of that. But then pretty soon after that, I got hired at Breakbeat Science, which was cool.
Nice. New York has a notorious house music scene. Were the clubs welcoming the broken beat sound, or was this really stationed at warehouses and one-off style events?
I mean, Yeah, it was so. The first breakbeat hardcore club in the United States was called NASA. To my knowledge, this was the first. That was like 91 to 93, but that was like before my time. So DB, who was one of the co-owners of Breakbeat Science, was DB and Scotto co-founded NASA, which focused almost exclusively at first on hardcore and breakbeat hardcore. And when I say hardcore, I don't mean like industrial strength. It was like the late 80s, early 90s.
Right, not punk hardcore, but like breakbeat hardcore.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was a thing. But then around 92, 93 is when it started to split, and there was like Dark Side, and then there was like what became just house and techno, like straight beat, four to the floor. So when those started splitting up, like the main room became more of the like four to the floor stuff. The other room became more breakbeats exclusively and early jungle. And then when that closed, jungle sort of got folded into the rave scene. I would say back then, the first club that featured jungle in New York that I can remember was Concrete Jungle. And that started, I want to say, in 94. And then, a lot of other like very small clubs followed. But to your point, the established big mainstream sort of clubs did not really feature drum jungle in the early days. It was only raves at first, and it took us years of building a scene there before, physics at Twilo. Like that's the first time I really remember drum and bass being at one of those house clubs.
Right.
Twilo was like one of these legendary venues where Junior Vasquez had his residency for a million years, and they
Sasha
had
and John Digweed had their night
Sasha
as well.
and Digweed, yep.
That's right.
Tiesto, all those. But they did physics, which was breakbeat science, and these guys who were called Mathematics. They were a DJ producer duo, and they also were promoters. And they threw these things together. They threw a thing called, breakbeat science was doing Jungle Nation, but then they started doing physics, which was both of them together. And they had like a smaller venue that they did it in, but then they did the V Recordings night at Twilo and a couple of other nights there. So that was cool to see what happened.
I'm thinking also, because I wasn't personally familiar with, Ohm, absolutely, but breakbeat science, not so much. And the only reason why I had any familiarity with Ohm is because Derek Carter, Mark Farina, were doing remixes and tracks that were coming out on that label. They did have a soulful, houseier side as well. Excuse me, and that's the stuff that I was picking up. But Moonshine Records, which I believe was originally based out of New York and then went to LA. Am I right or wrong? I'm not quite sure if I'm right or wrong with that. But
I think they were from New York.
Yeah, I think so. That's right. I think it was New York first, and then it became LA. Again, I might be wrong with this, and and neither of us are part of Moonshine really. But the reason why I'm bringing it up is because Moonshine did have AK 1200, DJ Dara. These were American drum and bass DJ producers, and Moonshine really was pushing the drum and bass sound at the time. I felt like if there was a release that would happen, it would potentially have a single or two on it, and then a remix, and then another remix, a secondary remix, which would be either breaks or drum and bass.
Yeah, they did a little bit of that. They did a couple of drum and bass CDs, but they didn't really feature it. It was always like a side room kind of endeavor for them. Beyond the Dara and the AK 1200, I think he just did that remix of Drowning and it blew up. But Dara did a full mix CD for them for sure.
Right.
But with regards to Ohm, like I didn't work with them. I toured with Ming and FS, who were signed to Ohm, and they were a drum and bass duo, hip hop drum and bass. They were way ahead of their time, and I went on tour with them. But then when they were on Ohm, and that was like a big departure for Ohm at the time to have this drum and bass duo that A, used CDJs before anyone else, and B, played live instruments over their DJ set, which was all original music. It was pretty crazy.
Did you find that during that time on that tour that the drum and bass was being well received?
Yeah, it was amazing. That tour was incredible. First of all, I got to tour in like a van with a bunch of dudes, which is an experience that everyone should get to have at least once. But because I was the only support act, like we would roll up and I would play from like whatever time the venue opened till they played their set, and then I would often play after their set until the venue closed. So sometimes I would play 8 to midnight and then like 1:30 to 4.
Sick.
So I would play a lot of different genres. I would play two-step, I would play speed garage, I would play breaks a little bit, but mostly drum and bass. But yeah, it was really well received. That tour was amazing. It was really cool. It was done very well.
Awesome sauce. But on the flip of it, that went well, but could you recall the challenges? Like, did you find yourself experiencing challenges as a DJ and performer and a producer during a time when electronic music wasn't at the forefront of everyone's fingertips?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there were so many challenges. We were fighting so hard just to get our whole life's purpose taken seriously, to be like, no, we're not just a bunch of drug users, drugged out people doing drugs. Like, I don't know. That's what the popular mainstream opinion of raves then was like, Joe Biden, the crack house law. So
Right.
Just fighting to be taken seriously on a scene level. And then, of course, on the flip side, as a woman, it was like at first everyone was welcoming and then everyone was questioning me. And then all of a sudden I wasn't being taken seriously. And that was another challenge to overcome that I still am overcoming to this day, because
Right.
we've made a lot of progress since then. But it was very sad to see that all the people that I'd been, like my day one crews that I came up with from New York, the second that I got a record deal, they were like, no, they kind of just turned on me.
Why?
And
Why do you think that
broke
was?
my heart. I don't know. I'll never know. Like, no one ever told me. All of the people that have ever sort of like done crappy things to me in this way, they've never told me why or what the reasoning was. Like, I don't know.
So it's a bad vibe. But since we're here and you're touching on it, if we look back on flyers from the past, we do not see many females on the lineup. Did you feel like an outlier? Was it tough being part of an exclusive group of women behind the mixer?
No, I didn't even really, it didn't feel like anything. I didn't really even notice it until some other female DJs like came on the scene in New York, like a couple years into me playing a lot. And then promoters started to like try to pit us against each other. And I always felt like that was so stupid. Like, we all do different things. Why is there just has to be the token woman and that's it? And now we've got to fight each other to be the token. I always thought that was kind of stupid, but I was lucky in the sense that I had someone at Breakbeat Science who really believed in me, my manager, who was my manager when I worked at the store. His name was Sean Shooter, and he pushed for me to get signed to the label. And then by getting signed to the label, it sort of elevated me to the very bottom of the headliners. And so I got to have a little taste of that, being a headliner at a time where, yeah, there wasn't many women. There was, Sandra Collins, there was DJ Rap, there was Stroboscopic, Electric Indigo, and I'm struggling to think of other ones at the time who were really big that were like headlining.
What
There
about
was
this
really
title
from
of D Jane or DJ Jane? I'm not quite sure if I'm pronouncing it right.
what?
Is that was the I just remember hearing about, for example, a crew out of Chicago that were called the D Janes, and I guess it
Oh,
was
they were
that
called Super Jane. Super Jane. That
Super
was
Janes.
Colette, Heather, and Dehoda.
Thank you.
And they were badass. But they started to come up around the same time as me. Like we all came up at the same time, but because they were doing house, we were not running in the same circles, but we would end up playing a lot of the same events together.
Right.
And then later on, there was a contest called Beauty and the Beats that myself, DJ Irene, and DJ Rap were the judges of. And J Flip ended up being the winner of that contest, and she went on tour with us. And that was like her first big break in the scene was that.
Were you guys gelling together on tour? Was it a great match?
No. No, it wasn't. Nobody liked what I was doing. And I don't know, honestly, I don't even think they wanted me to be there. I'm not sure why they asked me to be on any part of it, but they refused to let me play the event where we did the judging. And then when we did the tour, they would make me play after hours. They basically like didn't let me go on until at least 2 a.m. because they said that even though I was playing house at that time and I played only house on that tour, they were like, no, we don't like that. And yeah.
Do you think that maybe was more of a stigma that was, being looked at because of the genre of music that you came from?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. They were like, she's a drum and bass DJ. She doesn't belong here. Like, what? This is a house tour. But I was already like playing house then, and I had already put out a bunch of stuff that was house at that point.
Right.
So it was just kind of felt bad that no one wanted to do the research to figure out that, hey, I do this too, and I'm really badass at doing this, and I'm not going to ruin your party.
Did drum and bass have a bad name? Was that the black sheep of electronic music in America?
Kind of, yeah. I don't know if it's a bad name. It's just that it wasn't mainstream popular ever. Like it almost got popular in, Ronnie Size Brown Paper Bag era.
Right.
But once at that moment when it almost became big in the United States, the most established male drum and bass DJs of drum and bass collectively decided, and I can't say that they actually thought this, but they all collectively went super dark with the stuff that they played. They stopped playing the fun stuff and they all pivoted to like neurofunk and tech step. And that was really unpalatable at a lot of raves. And I feel like that contributed to pushing drum and bass further back underground and kind of gave it a bad name in the US from the standpoint of it no longer appealed to women. So then it became the whole like dudes with their arms folded, scowling at you, trying to look at your dub plates or whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
I may have seen that face once or twice. I've got a familiarity with it. I miss dub plates though. I mean, like I haven't used like a vinyl turntable like a 1200 in I'm not quite sure how long. Actually, I do have an idea. I think 2016 was a lot. I did an old school set for somebody here in Toronto, and I think that was the last time. And I actually even think I packed up a couple of dub plates for that show. Right now, anyone could launch a label. Cool name, access to data, and you're happening. But that wasn't always a situation. What did you do to start Play Me Records?
Well, okay, I kind of just got lucky because someone that I knew, a friend of mine named Mark Subsonic, had a very successful digital drum and bass label called Subsonic Recordings. And his distributor, Symphonic Distribution, came to him at the end of 2008, early 2009, and said, hey, you're so successful with your drum and bass label on this new digital landscape of Beatport. Would you like to start a second label for other music? And he came to me and said, these people want me to start another label, but I don't like any other music, and I know you do. Would you like to do, you can kind of like be the face of the label, you can do all the A&R, and I'll just handle all the back end and the business stuff. And I said, sure, that sounds great. So that was how Play Me was born. But
Wow.
very quickly, within about 4 weeks of starting the label, homie was like trying to get involved in the A&R and pitching me like the worst stuff and push through some really bad stuff.
So you didn't have full control, is what you're saying, over what was coming with the releases?
Well, so the first release, he pushed through some terrible something. I don't want to say it was terrible because it probably wasn't, but
It wasn't what you liked.
It wasn't what I liked, and I knew what was going to work, and that wasn't it. And I told him what I thought about it, and I told him that he needed to stop. He needed to like honor the agreement that we made, that it was going to be, I was going to do this, he was going to do that. And he, told me to go F myself, and he stopped talking to me, and then he stopped doing his part. And so I went to the distributor and I said, hey, this guy's being a jerk, and he just isn't doing any of the stuff. And sorry,
what happened?
Just, like,
what just happened?
Over.
Was it a cat or?
Yeah.
I knew it. It had to be.
She's not. She wants something, but I don't know what.
Yeah, attention.
Oh, right. So the distributor said, you know what? This guy's a jerk to us too. We don't even like working with him. We'll just like give you the account and you can do it yourself. So I think that was the second release or the third release that I retained full control of the label. And then it was just myself and my husband who kind of did everything for the first 4 years. I did all the art. He did all the mastering. I picked all the tunes. I did all the uploading, the label management, the accounting, the promotion, everything.
Sounds like good teamwork.
Yeah, it was great. But then I realized that because I had spent so much time and energy focused on the label, I had been neglecting my own productions. And that was at the time when everything kind of switched from you can be a badass DJ and have a DJ career to nope, you need to be a badass producer to have a badass DJ career.
Right.
So I kind of had to play catch up after that to get back to producing and putting out records and stuff.
What was that catch up like? Do you remember the experience of, was it stressful? Was it joyous?
I mean, I'll be very honest that I only got into producing because I recognized that it was something I needed to do to maintain my DJ career. Like, I enjoy producing in like the old timey sense of it where like you have an engineer, like you can be the person with the ideas and you can have certain things that you're really good at, like writing melodies or coming up with catchy phrases or, doing cool drum fills. But the whole aspect of engineering to push the envelope of sound design just like isn't the thing that I'm in love with. So when that became the focus of heavy bass music, it was really hard for me. It's never been easy for me to do production on any level, and coming back into it, in like 2010 after having taken like a couple years off. It was tough. I mean, I started working with a bunch of people on my label, which made it a little bit less pressure.
Right.
But yeah, it was not easy. It's never been easy for me. So I guess some people like, they're just, the way that DJing is easy for me, I think producing is easy for some people. And some people love to like create new sounds and like pull things out of their ass and be like, I pulled this sound out of thin air. And I'm like, no, I just like writing catchy songs and stuff that sticks in your head. That's what I'm good at. So I don't know.
What you did touch upon something that I'm curious about your feelings on, which is accessibility to music has changed how DJs live and operate in the music sphere. And so because music wasn't so accessible, for example, say 15, even 20 years, let's go 20 years ago. So, 20 years ago, like there was no Shazam. If there was a song that you heard on the weekend that you loved a lot, you did your best to remember the melody, and then you'd show up on the record store at shipment day and be like, "Do you have da 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 da?" And then maybe if you got lucky, someone would look at you and be like, "I do have that. I've got that. It's in. It just came in today."
Job. That was literally my job at Breakbeat Science. People would come in and be like, this song that goes, rah, 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 and you'd be like, okay, that's Mr. Happy. I got it.
Right. And I wish there was a montage of record shoppers trying to hum out Higher State of Consciousness to someone behind the counter. That would be a great YouTube. Do you have? And I'm thinking that because music wasn't so accessible, if you had a grandiose collection, or even an incredible, even if it wasn't massive, but you had 100 records, for example, and each of these records were obscure but fantastic, you could have an incredible career performing as a DJ, because this music, the only way that the average person would be able to hear it was if you played it.
Right.
But this is no longer the situation, I mean, if you wish to have music that nobody else has, you're either getting whips and promos from a friend pre-release, or it's something that you've gone and you've either bootlegged, remixed, or created yourself. And then that way you can guarantee, be like, I'm going to premiere this song. You can get up on your Twitter, I'm premiering this song tonight. It's brand new. Nobody's ever heard it before. Let me know if you recognize it, or if you shout it out, or take a quick clip and send it to me. Let me know. Guess. You could do a bit of a fishing game with it. But accessibility did change everything. So what I'm really leading into with this giant escape into the before the question is this is that what is the difference between a DJ and a DJ producer?
Well, a DJ is someone who creates a journey, creates a story based off of other people's music, who's able to take other people's music and weave a compelling narrative that, cliche but true, takes people on the journey. A DJ producer, producers get booked to play their own music, and their story is what they produce. So it's not the same. There are certainly producers now who take great pride in crafting sets made of their own tunes, and maybe some other people's as well. But it's just a completely different thing than knowing how to read a room and act accordingly and pull the right song. It's just a different thing. When you're a producer, you're booked to be the producer. People are coming to see you because they love your songs. When you're a DJ and you're just booked to DJ, someone's coming because they want to hear your story, I think.
Is it awkward or strange that a producer is being booked for a DJ set that would have no DJ experience, or perhaps just started really DJing? Maybe has been a producer for a great length of time, fantastic at production, maybe even fantastic at telling a story within 3, 5, or a 10-minute window. But maybe to piece that together, is this the same thing? Is it right? Is it wrong?
I mean, it is what it is. I guess when it first became a thing, I think my ego was offended by it. But in time, I've let it all go, because it doesn't really make any difference. Like what they're doing doesn't affect what I'm doing. And as long as people like what they're doing and they're happy doing it, then they should do whatever they want. Like I'm not a technology snob, and I don't, I only care about it when people fake it. Like if you have a ghost producer and you pretend that you produced all this stuff and you're like big famous whatever, but you don't do anything, yeah, that still bothers me, because I don't really vibe with that. But people who are producers and don't know how to DJ and get to headline big shows, good for them. Their appeal is not that they're a great DJ. Their appeal is that people love the songs that they produce. So it works for me. I'm not mad at that anymore. Yeah, but when people pretend that they're a great DJ and they're like, oh, I'm like the next Andy C. I triple drop on 3 decks. And then you see that they use the sync button. You're like, well, yeah, totally. I'm not impressed with that. Anyone can do that if you wanted to do that, but not everyone wants to do that. It's only impressive when someone like Andy C does it, because he literally did something that no one else was doing, and people were mad when Andy C came out because he used to like cut his dub plates all at the same speed so that he could triple drop them. And people were mad about that, and it's just, life's too short to be mad about these things. Like if art is art, and if you enjoy it, someone's doing something right, and no one should ever be mad about art and somebody's art, I don't think.
I had no idea that was a situation that dub plates were being cut at the same speed, and it makes sense. I mean, it expedites past the technical idea and lends more towards the flow and the possibility of the set.
Well, that was just, I mean, at that time, it was very controversial because it is really hard to double drop like old jungle tunes on vinyl. Like, especially given all of the situations that we were always put in, where jungle was always in like some crappy room with some terrible whatever. The needles were always skipping. Like, just being able to like pull off a mix when the intros used to be 2.5 minutes long, and the energy that drum and bass was so much more like house. Sure, people are like dancing, shuffling, but people are not like stomping on the floor and like skipping the decks in the same way that they did for jungle and drum and bass. So like trying to double drop and do all that with vinyl was really hard. So he just, he innovated a way to do it better and be like, hey, I'm going to elevate this art form to another level. And then he inspired a generation of DJs to try to learn how to double and triple drop.
Very popular right now in dubstep. At least I think so.
Yeah, but sure, it's popular, but it's like with dubstep, to me, it's more like what Richie Houghton does, where you're like, sure, I've got 4 songs that all sound basically the same, and I'm doing stuff like, yeah, these people doing their mega chops or whatever. Like, I don't hate on it, but I kind of laugh at it, because once you know what they're doing and what it's made of, you're like, oh, every song is literally either written in E minor or F minor, and we have sync buttons, and it really doesn't take a lot of skill to line up a bunch of tracks that are all the same speed and the same key, that all basically sound the same, and do whatever back and forth with them. It's hard when you have crazy break beats, boom, boom, cacking all over each other. It's not really
I want to sample that. Awesome. How do you think that drum and bass and breaks has progressed as genres?
Well, drum and bass has continued to progress. Drum and bass really continues to push the envelope. And as far as I'm concerned, drum and bass is still at the top of the pyramid in terms of like peak technicality and most technical music to try to produce. Like drum and bass still stays there for me. It's always kept innovating and pushing and whatever. Like the sounds have evolved and they've gotten better. Sure, some's gotten worse, whatever, but breaks is a little different. Breaks started to evolve And then it got to a point where I was talking with like Decline and Keith McKenzie about this a couple months ago. Like, basically, a lot of the breaks people, like, there was like the tear out thing that happened like 2004 to 2006. And then other stuff started to become popular, and a lot of the producers kind of moved on to other stuff like dubstep or like fidget house or any number of the genres that came after break sort of had its big peak in like the mid 2000s. But a lot of the producers just got into doing bootlegs and edits and stuff, and like that's cool, but it didn't push the genre as much. It didn't keep innovating, if you will. So only a few acts really stayed relevant through time. And I would argue that those acts have not really pushed the genre in new directions, but they've kept it consistent. Like, breaks is a thing. It's sort of like it's just straight up like party music, you know? It's not that serious, and it's just for the booty shaking, you know?
Right.
So I don't know. So there have been artists that have pushed the envelope. Certainly now there's a new generation of breaks producers coming up that I think, do you know the label called 83?
I don't.
Okay, this guy called Guau. I'm probably saying his name wrong. He's from Spain, and he's pushing some really interesting. There's stuff that's like acid. There's stuff that's a little two-steppy. There's stuff that's more booty, but it's very forward-thinking and very different from what existed in the past. So big up to them
Cool.
for doing.
On the mic is
Hell yeah.
is
He's
the only
dope.
breaks DJ or producer or both, I guess, essentially that I'm aware, and that's because I feel like every time I go to Beatport, homie's got a new release out. Like he's like
the recordings, smashing it.
Yeah, I feel
he's
he's like 2 or 3 a week guy. He's like he's his own factory, and most of the time I like it. There's another Yo DJ or DJ Yo. I can't. Speed.
Yo Speed.
Yo Speed.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There's a bunch of really good breaks people that are doing a lot right now. There's On to Mike. There's Magic Mike. There's Keith McKenzie.
Yeah, Keith is. I mean, I didn't bring it up because Keith isn't new, but Keith is dope.
Keith really found his. After a million years where it was KMFX and he was doing all the stuff with Fix for a million years, he broke out on his own. And he really figured out how to do it and dial it in. And he's like probably my favorite breaks producer right now.
Sick. So literally
like
my neighbor at Burning Man. We camped right next to each other.
Nice.
Yeah, good times. That guy's dope. So, meme quote. Dance music as an underground culture used to be a safe haven for those who didn't fit into the mainstream to have a refuge for our weirdness. Now, most of it is populated by the kids who once sought to escape from, and then I'm sure you're familiar with this meme. You were the picture in this meme from the quote.
That was my quote. That was my quote.
So that's what I wanted to ask. Was this actually your quote?
Absolutely.
Okay, where was that quoted from?
I don't even remember. It was so long ago. It was like
a magazine interview or radio interview? Or?
I don't know. I don't even remember where it came from, what interview it was from.
What was it like being a meme that swept across the internet?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I don't know. You must. You were the photo.
I got a lot of things about it, and a lot of people have. I don't really put too much stock in any of that. Like, I stand by that statement. Like, if they want to say it's a meme, okay, but it's real. It's true. EDM has become full of the people that we were the fucking weirdos in high school. I was a weirdo growing up. I was a kid who got bullied by everyone, and then I became a raver. And then all the kids wanted to go to the raves. Oh, Reed, take me to a rave. Take me to the limelight. Ooh.
Right.
It's like, I don't know.
I'm not surprised. I mean, we had a great time back then, right? So it makes sense that people would be like, the fuck's going on over there? And be like, the fucking party's over here. What do you mean the fuck's going on? Be like, the fuck's going on over there? Be like, I'm at the bar. Be like, well, that sounds interesting.
No. I mean, just the whole homogenized monoculture that exists, that is popular music.
Right.
It just had no appeal. And now we've come full circle where EDM is popular music. And I can only hope that more of the people who are the true innovators will get to reap the monetary benefits of EDM going mainstream.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I hope. I like to stay hopeful.
I mean, I think right now, from my observations, there's plenty of emphasis on the brand. And then secondarily or tertiary is the music. And I'm saying that because I'm finding I use Twitter lots. I mean, out of all the social media apps, I feel like I'm on Twitter the most. And I'm constantly coming across posts saying, tonight I'm going to drop a techno set. Tonight I'm debuting my tech house project. And there's a lot of energy behind the posts from the fans. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, well, there are some great tech house producers that have been at it for long before it exploded in the United States, which is, I feel like it's doing right now. I feel like tech house and potentially after, I don't know if you caught any of the ultra live streams, Hardwell turned up and played some. They call it techno. It sounded like techno trance to me, but it's being called techno, and if that's the forecast of things to come, and I feel like potentially Ultra has that moment of forecasting what's about to happen for the next year, then it's that. And I'm not dissing it, by the way, because I caught some of it and I enjoyed some of it, and but it did make me think about these Twitter posts, and there's a lot of energy behind the brand, but there's no quest to see what the origin of it is. Instead, it's here and now, and whatever was before, the relevance, maybe.
Well, that's sort of what I take issue with, is that for us, the cost of entry to the scene was very high because you had to go to a record store,
Right.
get a flyer,
Right.
call an info line,
Right.
go to a map point, whatever it was, in order to get to a rave party back in the day. It was difficult.
You had to do work.
You had to do work, and you had to really want it. Nobody was there because their friend said, oh, there's going to be cute girls there, or, oh, it's, there'll be like alcohol. People were there because they really wanted to be there, and they were there for the music. And now EDM has become just another disposable consumer culture where its experiences are created to be consumed. And very much to your point, no one gives a fuck about the backstory. They identify with a dude in a fucking marshmallow helmet and they're sold, and they don't care if he's not produced any of the songs, if it's not even that dude in the suit. They don't care if Hardwell used to make Big Room and today he's making techno. For the average EDM festival goer, they know about the brands, they know about whatever, they want to go for this experience to consume the things that they're already sold on. they're not really looking for something new, and they're not there. If they're there for the music, it's because it's easy for them to consume it. It's not, if it was more difficult, they wouldn't be there. And I don't mean more difficult, because a lot of these things are rather unpleasantly difficult, like these camp out raves and things like EDC. Like, to go to EDC and like GA, it's kind of difficult to go, but like a lot of people are really caught up in the ceremony of putting together a look that identifies you with the tribe and puts you in the place. I don't know. I don't have the right words to describe it. And like, I'm not trying to put down anyone who is a casual consumer of EDM, but
Right.
I'm just differentiating that it's a very different experience. We were not casual consumers of anything. We worked for that, to find the thing that was meaningful for us. And in fact, we worked to build that. And now that it's built, it's easy for people to consume it, and they do.
Is that the natural path of things, not just exclusive? Is that what you're talking about? Is that the natural path of things? Because
It's the natural path of capitalistic things. I don't think things in general, no, but capitalism drives everything to the bottom line, to the brand, to the marketing, where the marketing becomes more important than the content. And I think a good thing that's come of all this is that I see the underground coming up again in a really big way. There is a whole movement of people that reject everything that I just talked about, and they're building what feels like an early 90s rave scene all over again, in, warehouses and clubs, and, even things like Boiler Room or whatnot, for how, whatever they are. It's the same concept. And I do see that happening. So that gives me hope that, everyone's not in it just to be a commercialized brand. And there are still people really in it for the love and the music and the joy of the spiritual communion that we all, I don't know, maybe you're religious, maybe you're not. I'm not religious. I wasn't raised with a religion, but discovering the rave scene, that became like my spirituality. Communing with the music, going to have a dance and to spend this time with the music, with all these other people in this like ecstatic, sweaty, dark. I mean, it was such a pure thing.
I definitely enjoyed a lot of what you just said. And I agree, definitely. Feels like there's something that's happening right now as well. I'm not quite sure if it's the pandemic that got that energy started, like as a spark. But whatever ignited it, it's
there's
lit.
A lot of things. Honestly, I think the fact that there is a lot of marginalized people in our scene, and the fact of like people of color and the LGBTQ factions of the scenes, those are the true creators of house and techno. And they kind of got pushed out, and they are coming back and reclaiming their spaces. And that is a lot of what's driving the underground right now. And I think that's a wonderful thing to see, because so much of dance music has been whitewashed, and the true history of where this all comes from has been lost. And to your point, like, a lot of the younger generation does not care. And so the people who are creating these experiences, and then the people that are seeking out these experiences, these collectives, these new underground events, that's what's really driving the culture forward, in my opinion.
No, it's good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Opinion is super relevant. That's why Utility Room with REID SPEED. So here we go. I've got some hot seat question for you right now. Maybe the most challenging question for the entire session together.
Okay.
What would you say were the 3 most important records for you while you were on tour? Did you have 3 records, for example, that, and there may even be more, but let's focus on just 3, that were in your bag, in your box, on your USB key, your CD book? Were there 3 tracks that were so absolutely vital to the dance floor that when you were going out and getting back onto an airplane, you were like, this is coming with it. This is what I'm going to use. Could you name what these 3 tracks would be?
No. I can't. Like, I don't have songs like that. The way I organize my music is completely different. The way that I deal with music is so different from, I guess, how most people would deal with it.
How would you say that would be?
My USB stick has 14,000 songs on it. It has every conceivable genre of dance music on it, so that if I go to a place and someone's like, "Oh, you want to go back to back on Bass House?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got you."
You're just like fucking ready. I'm fucking ready.
Garage, I got you. Drum and bass, dubstep, any genre I've ever played, I still maintain a decent folder on my USB, and I'm ready. I mean, there are songs that I still like to play under certain circumstances, but over my time in music, I've played so many different genres and so many different types of events that there has never really been major consistency for me over time. Like, I just keep it moving, and whatever's new goes at the top of the stick. And if I feel like playing something old, I know where that is. It's like song 500 of Dark Rollers or whatever. Like,
do you have a summary for yourself,
like,
you think?
Sorry, what?
No, apologies. Were you trying to make a point?
I was just thinking about songs that sort of like defined my life as a DJ. And I'm like, I could tell you those, but in terms of stuff that I would play regularly, like, no.
Sure, let's go on to that point then. What would you say would be 3 tracks that help define who REID SPEED is?
Foul play, music is the key. Just thinking about that song, I'm almost gonna cry.
My engineer Rob's shouting out. He's going the 10-inch version.
Yeah, I have the 10-inch version. I have the 12-inch version. I have the Omni Trio remix. That song will forever. I can't. I'm like, I get so emotional about that song.
I can see it. That's amazing.
I'm like literally in tears because that song like means so much to me. Yeah, that one, Temple of Dreams by Messiah. That was one of the first songs I ever heard and remembered. And that like set me on a path. And if I had to pick a third one that really like set me on the path, it might be Higher States of Consciousness. That's such a tune that in my formative raving years, it took me to so many places, and it really put me in the sense of in the headspace of wanting to do this for real.
It's a monument of electronic music.
Yeah.
The song that we just talked about this last week. It's how that ended up on the radio, how it ended up as a single. I mean, it's like that in itself is just it's wild. I can only imagine like a stuffy, dulled out radio programmer who was like, all right, so I add this to the playlist, and probably just looked up and be like, are you fucking kidding me? Be like, no, we're serious. Be like, the fuck am I supposed to do with this, man? Like what do I follow it with? Engelbert Humperdinck. I mean, you fucking like, what am I supposed to do right now with this record? Great, incredible. I wonder like if we could be a fly on the wall. It's another instance of love to have it on video, to be in the studio while Josh was killing it on that track. Like,
Seriously.
what was happening? What was going through? Like, how did you start with nothing and end up with that? Like, it almost. I'm confident that a piece of it has to be almost accidental, and that he was just there going, yeah,
yeah,
right, like.
I don't know. I can't even begin to think of how all that, but thank you, Josh Wink.
Yeah, thank you, Josh Wink. Exactly. So, what about today? Where would you position yourself today as REID SPEED?
What do you mean? Where would I position myself?
Would you? Are you looking forward to making music? Are you recessed a bit? Are you more reflective?
I've got a lot of projects in progress right now that I'm actually really excited about.
Dope.
I have a bunch of collabs and a couple of originals. I have a collab with Decline that I'm super excited about.
Sick.
I have a collab with one of my newer artists called Skeleton. We just released her debut album. It's pretty much the first drum and bass album by a woman ever released in the United States.
Wild.
So her and I have some stuff going on. I've got a couple of originals. I have some merch. My first official merch launch is coming soon. Starting to play shows again. I'm part of a crew here called Fractured. We're throwing shows. We're actually booked Decline to play in May.
Sick.
So I got a lot of stuff going on. I just put a mix out a couple of weeks ago. I got another one coming that's going to go with the merch launch. And then, yeah, I've got just songs coming. My next song, my remixes came out last week for The Spark. Myself and Airglow and Metric Man, The Spark. We had a bunch of dope remixes from that, including one from Keith McKenzie. Next month, or is it this month already? No, April. I have a song called Alarm with Sam Fox that's coming out on Play Me. And then an all original EP on Play Me in June. Man, I don't know. I'm probably forgetting stuff. I'm like
awesome. I mean,
Magic Mike that's like taking way too long. I feel really bad that it's taking long, but I don't get as much time to work on music as I used to because I do have a full-time other music job. So I get time on the weekends, but then when there's shows again. So every weekend that there's a show, there's no music time. So it's tough to find the balance, but I feel like everything's in a really good place. And, I feel good about the state of music right now and wherever I'm at in it. I'm grateful to be included in it in whatever capacity. And yeah.
How about some coordinates so our listeners can find you? Where can we all find you and all of your awesome efforts online?
On most social media, I'm just at REID SPEED. I do a Twitch broadcast pretty much every Sunday, 2 to 5 Pacific Standard Time, and that's twitch.tv/REID SPEED TV. And then my Facebook is at DJ REID SPEED, but everything else is just REID SPEED on SoundCloud, on Twitter, on Instagram. I don't know how to tell you my Spotify. If you just search for REID SPEED, you'll find me. My label's called Play Me Records, so everything for my label is at Play Me Records. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think that's it.
Thank you so much for joining and sharing with us tonight. Incredible tales. Love to hear what's on your mind, what you're thinking, and sharing. This has been wonderful. So, cheers for being with us. I hope you had a good time too.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you having me. It was really awesome to talk to you. I'm like, I haven't seen you in a million years, so it's really nice to reconnect.
Yeah.
Over the internet on one of these type of things, and
Right.
Thank you. Thanks for taking time to chat with me.
I feel like your story is an essential one. I'm really happy that we were able to capture some of it, and you're dope. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. You're a legend unto yourself, so don't discredit yourself.
Cheers. This is REID SPEED. Oh, gotta do it that way. Oh, the camera. I've lost the camera. REID SPEED, and she's totally dope. Please check out all of her and her music and her adventures online. My name is Jello. This is Utility Room. Wah! And we're gonna see you next week. Thanks a lot for tuning on in.
Bye.
Thank you very much for watching. If you've had a great time, and I hope you have, there's more awesomeness right here. Jump into these episodes. You know you want them.